Labrīt, cienījamie klausītāji! Es domāju, ka mēs pamazām varam sākt. Es esmu Agnese Zīmele, projektu vadītāja Latvijā eksporta veicināšanas nodaļā, un es priecājos, ka jūs šorīt esat pieslēgušies, lai uzzinātu ko vairāk par partneru izvērtēšanas un arī biznesa attiecību veidošanas principiem Skandināvijā. Un tāpēc ar mums šodien ir divi vieslektori. Viens no viņiem ir Mārcis Pumpurs, vecākais konsultants un partneris risku vadības konsultāciju uzņēmumā Sekredo. Un Mārcis šodien runās par latviešu uzņēmēju biežāk pieļautajām kļūdām, uzsākot un arī īstenojot biznesa attiecības ar skandināvu partneriem un ko darīt, lai no tām izvairītos. Savukārt, sākumā jūs dzirdēsiet vairāk par pašu Skandināvijas tirgu un skandināvu biznesa mentalitāti attiecībā uz sadarbības veidošanu ar ārvalstniekiem un saistību pildīšanu. Par to jums pastāstīs Robins Lofts, Zviedrijas risku konsultācijas uzņēmuma Risk React Advisory vadītājs. Webināra laikā jūs droši varat uzdot sev interesējošos jautājumus Q&A sadaļā. Un es arī kādā brīdī čatā ielikšu saiti uz novērtēšanas anketu, kuru es jūs lūgtu arī webināra laikā izpildīt. Bet šobrīd es vairs ilgāk nekavēšos un došu vārdu Mārcim.
Hello and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hello and welcome to webinar How to Find Reliable Export Partner in Scandinavia. From now on, we will continue the webinar in English, since we also have participants from foreign countries, and Mr. Robin Loft as well will continue his presentation in English. The event is jointly organized by a group of security risk consulting companies, React Risk Advisory, also represented by Mr. Loft. Latvian company Sekredo, that is also being a part of React Risk Advisory Group, and of course Investment and Development Agency of Latvia, which is the main organizer of this event. My name is Mārcis Pumpurs, and I'm glad to see you all here. I must say that I'm pleasantly surprised by the high interest about this event and the questions we have received already. Actually, we have adopted the contents of this webinar to be able to answer the questions you have sent in to try to answer to the specific questions you have requested. In a couple of words about myself, I'm partner and senior consultant at SIA Sekredo, and also CEO of risk management company Sekua. And throughout my professional career for about 15 years, I have been very closely related to Scandinavian markets and especially Sweden. But I will touch upon that later in my presentation. But to start with, let me introduce you to my colleague and partner, Mr. Robin Loft. Mr. Robin Loft is a senior advisor and CEO of Swedish React Risk Advisory Company. Robin is experienced safety risk management specialist with also academic background and more than a decade experience in business risk and security advice. So Robin has a very deep insight into Scandinavian markets and risk management in these markets. And besides Scandinavia, Robin's geographical area of basic competences is Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Robin, thank you firstly very much for participating in the event, and if I may ask you to start with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mārcis, and good morning to everyone. In these difficult times with COVID, Zooms is proving to be more useful than ever, as well as Microsoft Teams. So I will try now to share my screen to begin a presentation. Working, yeah?
Yes, it's working.
Perfect. So, let's see. So here's a short agenda of my presentation today. After a short introduction about myself and React Risk Advisory, I will go on and talk about our experience and advices when it comes to cross-border business and the main risks related to that. As Marcy said, I am one of the founders and one of the CEOs of React Risk Advisory. From the beginning, I have about 5 years of security risk studies, studied most security risk management. After that, I've been working as an international consultant for the past 10 years. The last 6 has been in executive management positions, both in Scandinavia and Middle East. I've built up the business for a different consultancy company as well in Middle East Africa. So I know well what it is to establish a business in a new market. During my 10 years, I have performed assignments in about a bit more than 50 countries, both on site, but also project managing them. And all of these are basically cross-border business, working locally and internationally. Today, as a CEO, I'm also senior advisor to a few of our clients' executive management committees. And these are larger Swedish companies and larger American corporations. And I spend my time on the days, except for leading the company, I'm doing a bit of complex investigations and project management. Normally, I tend to travel a bit more than the past 6 months. So now, when I'm grounded, so to say, this is my new type of traveling through Zoom and Teams. So to start with React Risk Advisory, we have 4 legs that we stand on. Those are intelligence, risk, security, and crisis. And we work from giving advices, doing assessments, down to project management. So we're not a typical security company, but we say that we work with security risk management. We prevent and handle disturbances within these fields, and we try to understand our clients' business to help them move forward successfully without any disturbances. And that means to initiate proactive measures when it's necessary, but also reactive measures when something has happened. Today, across our countries, we're doing about 50% proactive work and about 50% reactive work. We have offices today in Sweden, Poland, Latvia, Ukraine, and UAE, and we are 20 senior advisors and continuously growing. Our growth rate is about 30% a year. We have more than 100 clients, and the typical client type is a large multinational company from Europe, Scandinavia, US, or Middle East, basically. So when I speak with my client and I ask them why they are using contractors from the Baltics within different fields, everything from constructions to IT, they state that there are several major investments in Scandinavian countries which requires additional workforce, but also specific competence. They also have, of course, it is a question about price as well. I mean, since EU was open up, it's easier to do this type of businesses. But it's also about having special competence, getting over here and helping us with a special type of installations and servicing, especially when it is being manufactured in different countries in the Baltics. Then they tend to use the specific competence from those companies or from those areas. Today, Sweden is a small and export and import driven country, and we have many different nationalities working in Sweden, and both for private individual persons and for companies, it's not a strange thing to use a company from different countries in Europe. But of course, the trade is largest between the Nordic countries. When we look at conducting business in Scandinavia, I would like to compare that to other countries that I've worked in. I mean, I was living in Middle East for about 3 years, establishing business there, helping clients with the same questions that I'm talking about right now, conducting due diligence on partners, conducting investigations when money was lost, trying to get money back when they were stolen. And I can say that when you have a working justice system, as we have in Sweden, it's more important to have a written agreement. And in Sweden, it is standard to have a written agreement. And if you don't have it, you don't have any proof of what's being agreed upon. Even if, in theory, orally agreed agreements are also okay in Sweden, but they are too difficult to prove. So in practical terms, a written agreement is absolutely standard. We are doing written agreements with everyone, both clients in Sweden and clients abroad. And we will not start an assignment without having it in place. And that is about our own risk management as well. Standard payment terms are 30 days. And this is regulated by law as well. So in Sweden, you always have 30 days to pay your invoice, even if it says 10 days. But more than 30 days is not standard. Looking at US, UK, standard is 60 to 90 days, but in Sweden, still 30 days. So this is often a negotiation point in business transactions. So this is a good thing to think about, that the opponent on the other side of the table is used to having 30 days as a requirement. When you write an agreement with a client, always expect a conflict. Include interim goals, what parts that you will achieve during the process to fulfill the full contract. Every interim goals should have defined indicators so you can prove what you have done, to what quality, and so on. In a very good agreement, and larger projects, of course, we try to arrange payment after each interim goal is achieved. In that way, the risk is divided between the client and the contractor. So basically, you fulfill one part that you have agreed upon. You both sign off that this is the right quality, right time of delivery and everything, and then they pay for that work. And then you continue to the second phase. Doing that, you are continuously mitigating the risks of not getting paid. And this is not a strange thing either. And I don't think that anyone should accept anything less in larger projects. If necessary, if you find any issue with the buyer, which might be the case from time to time when there is a new subsidiary started for just a project, use prepayment or the grant of credit. That is also the standard in Sweden, that if you are not, if you can't pass a credit check, you're used to pay upfront, at least part of it. And the main risk, of course, with doing business abroad, if you know your business and if you know your quality, and if you know to keep your workers safe and so on, the main risk is not to receive payment. And there are two different scenarios where you might end up with this. One of them being that the buyer is not able to pay. They are insolvent, they are on the verge of bankruptcy, or they have even filed for bankruptcy, or they have no money to pay with. In this case, they can try to stall as well. We will get paid, we will pay you later, and so on. But that is no guarantee to get full payment. The other scenario that I would say is almost as usual as the first one is being a victim of fraud. Because when a new company is started for a construction project or anything else, that is a transfer of risk for the buyer. Because if it didn't mean a risk to start this project, they would have it in their mother company instead. So that's important to know as well, that newly started subsidiaries for special projects is to divide responsibility and to lower their own risk. That if something would go really bad or turn out really bad, they are not applicable to pay more than what's at stake in that single company. Looking at Sweden particularly, but also the other Scandinavian countries, we have well-organized and also government-backed system for debt collection. If you don't receive your funds, you can contact a company that will try to enforce it for you. If they can't do it, then you can go to the government, the enforcement agency, and get them to try to get the money back for you. And then as a last stage, you can always sue the party. But this system only works when you have a written agreement, when you have all the structures in place, when you have proof that you were agreed about the assignment, you were agreed about the delivery, and that is also the thing that you have delivered to them. As I said before, in theory, it's also applicable to orally agreed projects, but in practice, how do you prove it? So always have a written agreement to reduce your own risk. And I will say that several times during this presentation. But if they don't have any money, they still can't pay you, no matter how many papers you have. Even if they say that the owner is responsible for the debt personally. If the owner has traveled to Malta or Asia, or is just bankrupt in Sweden, they still can't pay. When we look at the final stage, to take a process to court, to take a debt to court, that might be an expensive process because you have to pay your lawyer fees, you have to file for a lawsuit, you have to go to court. And after, I mean, I would say below 15,000 euros, it's not really worth doing it if it's not a principal case. But even if you win in court, you might still not get any money if they don't have any money to pay with. So if you start to do business with a fraudster or with a company that's close to insolvent, then you will not get any money either way. You will have a debt in your balance sheet, and that will never be paid. So as important as the agreement is, it's also equally important to do your homework before starting to work with a new partner. If a buyer filed for bankruptcy or reconstruction, then you can assume that the payment is partly or in full possibly lost. What will happen during a reconstruction case is that the government will go in and they will pay the company's bills to proceed. And that sounds very good, but in reality, when we sit in the table with the lawyers and with other opponents, they try to challenge everything to pay as little as possible. They are looking at the contract, they are looking at what you have done. Does it really cost this much? And they try to negotiate everything down. So they sit there, the lawyers, and they are then talking for the company, but also in the end for the government. And they're trying to get the debt to be as small as possible. And that is not an easy situation to be in as a contractor, especially if you're not from Sweden, because you have to involve lawyers, you have to involve people that can help you. And as you all know, if you involve parties like this, when you are in an immediate urgency, then it will also cost more. So I urge you to have these contacts up and running before starting working in a new country. When we look at indicators for high-risk companies, it's not enough to do just a credit check. We have to look at different factors. We have to look at, is the company newly started? And then the question is, where do they get their money from? How is the finances over time if they have a record? How have they handled their business and business ethics over time? Do they have any history of non-payment? Any history of legal proceedings? We're also looking at the board members and the management to see if they have any unhealthy business link or criminal record. And then we have the question about subsidiaries as well. Because in some countries, a group of companies called a company group have a common responsibility to pay debts and deliver work and so on. In Sweden, a subsidiary is a single entity. So even if you have Skanska or Peab or any of the really big construction companies in Sweden as a mother company to a big group, the subsidiary is still liable for the debt. So no matter what they say, if they don't have any guarantees written in the agreement that their mother company will pay, then the subsidiary is single-handed responsible for the debt, if there is no obvious foul play going on. So looking at some case studies, we had one Latvian company that we helped, and they provided services to a construction company in Sweden and didn't receive payment. I think the amount was about 50,000 euros. The buyer was a newly started subsidiary. And if we looked at this buyer before they went into a relationship with them, then we would have recommended them to look closer or to get other guarantees. Anyway, the buyer applied for reconstruction, and we tried to find out if they had any assets, if we could get the money back, or anyway. And we had meetings with a law firm responsible for reconstruction, and they could not clearly verify the debt because of the agreement. The agreement wasn't written correctly. The spokespersons from the buyer that was very unavailable, as they always are in these occasions, said that it wasn't delivered up to quality, up to standards. So they tried to, first they tried to write down the amount or not recognize the debt. But in the end, the full debt was not recognized and paid due to too many factors that wasn't fulfilled. In the system we have in Sweden, where you actually can get a lot of help from the government and from the courts, and this also applies to full of Scandinavia, that works when you play by the rules. If you do not play by the rules, if you try to cut corners, then it's not applicable. Then you are in much more risk than you think that you are. And that is the worst risk to be in. But when we help our clients, we tell them that we want to show them what risk they're exposed for. And then we can recommend them how to handle or mitigate that risk. But it's their own decision. When it comes down to the end of the day, our most important job is to show the client what the risk is. And then it's up to them to take the risk or not. Moving into a new country, making a new business, helping someone with something is always risk. All businesses are involved in risks. I can also mention that since we started this company in this form 4 years ago, we have performed over 1,000 assignments, and we do not have one single not paid invoice. And this is due to that we are doing our homework every time. We do not work with any companies that's on our blacklist, and we always write agreements, and we do everything properly. And this is much cheaper than taking the downside when something happens. Looking at a different case study, we have a construction company, or we have several construction companies and other types of companies from both Baltics and Eastern Europe that works in Sweden. Those are the two most common regions working here that we're helping with this. We are helping them with due diligence for potential business opportunities all the time. So almost every week we help someone with this. So we check for indicators that we have agreed upon, and they reject business opportunities below a certain degree. And we know that about 50% is rejected. And this shows that 50% of the opportunities that they have gotten to themselves are high risk. If they would proceed to these 50%, they would probably have a lot of problems. It's not, I mean, when we talk about non-payment, that is the worst situations. But we also have many obstacles before that. I mean, working with a client that doesn't know to pay their bills or handle the company correctly, it's also a big management issue. Sending staff over there, or they ordered the wrong thing, or they said the wrong number, or always issues. So it's about finding professional partners to work with. And this is the only long-term way of doing it, is my opinion. So looking at some general recommendations, is you have to know your business partner. I mean, you wouldn't move in or marry someone that you don't know. And this is almost the same thing. You wouldn't sell part of your company or take in a new CEO without knowing them. Doing a credit check is never enough, because then you always get the top worst 10%, nothing else. The other 40% that is also equipped with high risk, you will not even find them there. And we have open systems in Scandinavia. It's especially in Sweden. It is easy to find the information. Have a reliable partner in the country to work with long term, then I promise you that you will find a good solution to do this financially positive as well. Always prepare for the worst. When going into a new relationship or a new business project, prepare for a conflict. Think that you will not be agreed during or after that the project is finished. Then you think about what to write in the agreement. Put down the points that I said in the beginning. Get part payments if necessary. If you really want to do the business with a high-risk client, get payment up front. A handshake is never enough. Have a reliable partner in the country for assessment and assistance. Have someone to help you with these checks, and also have someone to help you when it goes south. That could be a law firm, or it could be a consultancy firm that have connections in country, just to have it as smooth as possible. For some, I mean, doing business internationally, you learn that avoiding headache is worth a lot. And at last, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. I mean, I have seen so many companies, especially in the Middle East, but also in Scandinavia, but especially in the Middle East, going in for the big dream. They have a sheikh sponsoring this project. They have this, they have that, they have that. They spend thousands of euros, thousands, sometimes even more, to come into the country to get that business deal that is just fantastic for them. And it is, I would say, it is never true. The only time when it's true is when you have corruption involved. So if you do not want to bribe someone, and if you're against corruption, there is no business deal that is too good to be true. Business deals are about hard work. It's about having a long-term view, and it's about having the right things in place. Thank you for now.
Robin, if I may, we have a question, if you see it in the chat also, yeah? It's related to payment terms. What do you mean with 30-day standard payment terms? Does that mean that if we have agreed on 10 days payment term, customers still can pay within 30 days? Could you provide an answer to that?
Legally, yes, absolutely. If you have agreed about 10 days, they can still wait for 30 days to pay it. I mean, normally, if you had agreed about it, they would pay within 10 days, but they don't have to pay until 30 days. So you can't go to the debt collection or to the Swedish Enforcement Agency after 20 days.
Exactly. So basically there, we would not recommend any, enforcement activities before those 30 days. So it would be advisable just to wait the legal term of these 30 days and then proceed with some.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would still say that if you had agreed about 10 days, then it's time to start reminding them of the 12 days that the invoice is not paid.
Exactly. Thank you. And also one question from my side. So Sweden is very open society. Information, also commercial information, is freely available in registers and so on. But could you answer if this information is also available to foreign entities? Meaning, if I, as a Latvian entity, also can access this information, or I need to have, for example, Swedish ID number, or how does that work?
It depends on the information and how you want to get the information. I mean, in Sweden, you can always call to the government and you can get certain information. In some cases, you have to go into a computer system and you have to fill in your personal security number and also some sort of ID check that we have. But in some cases, it's open online as well. So I would say that it depends on the sensitivity of the information. And the information that you really want, then I think that you need to, in best case, have a partner to help you. In another case, when you can't afford it or don't, if it's not suitable for you, try to understand and find out how you get the most important information for your specific business. Is it the court records of the board members, or is it the financial information, or is it different steps? Do we start with to get one type of information, and if that's negative, we continue to look at the next one, or so on? So it depends on the information.
Yeah, but probably like normal company register information should be accessible also for foreign entities, right?
Yes. Normally company information about board members, about address, about their turnovers for the past years are open online just to search for anyone. Absolutely. But if you want to know about who owns the company, then you have to be a Swedish citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an example.
But also probably it would be still advisable, going back to some of the aspects that you mentioned, to have a local partner, local support in potential risk case or to gather this information, because as well as in our work, it's also always advisable to have a local resources to involve if necessary. Would you agree?
And you also have, absolutely. I mean, we have, I think simultaneously we are working in 20 plus countries at the same time with different projects. And we always have local partners to assist us with different things, because it's about our own risk management and ensuring the quality of the assignment. But I would say that we also have to take into account the GDPR, the European data legislation. So when we help a client with this, with an assignment like this, we are considering that, and we have those rules and standards and routines in place to mitigate that legal risk for our client and for ourselves as well. So that is an important aspect as well when we're talking about personal data, about board members, about management positions.
Yes, exactly. Basically, GDPR requirements in very essence and very basis means that everybody has to have a legal basis to access and analyze certain private data. And this has to be respected at all costs. I see that we also have other questions related to let's say, contract culture in Scandinavia. That there is one comment that not so much it is necessary to have a written agreement, as all communication with Nordic partners is done in written or email communication. But I think Robin very well commented on that we are talking about risk perspective, and that a contract or agreement for any deal is a very good tool to be used just in risk management. Would you have any more comments to that, Robin?
Yeah, I mean, agreeing about an assignment or a project over phone, over email, over a lunch, that's fantastic until you get a problem. When you get a problem, try to take that to court or even to the Swedish Enforcement Agency. You have to be able to prove in clear text what you have agreed upon to be able to insure the debt. But even if you insure the debt, maybe the party cannot pay. So before you even do that, you have to know that they can be liable for the debt as well. But I mean, all business is good business until you have problems. And now we're talking about risk mitigation measures, more, as you said.
Yes, and one more comment. It's when preparing to this webinar, I talked to a number of my partners in all Scandinavian countries and Finland, and actually everywhere verbal agreement is acknowledged by law, and it's allowed. It's a form of agreement. But exactly as I totally agree with that statement of Robin, that it's until you get the problem. And here with the business we come from, the risk management, we are talking from risk perspective. So written agreement is definitely a must, and it works across cultures, which is one of the aspects I intend to talk in my presentation. It's just a good tool, and it's just about negotiation, how you talk and negotiate with your partners, that you have such kind of requirements to have a written contract, and that's it.
Yeah, that's probably the cheapest and best risk mitigation measures you can have in place.
Exactly, because when preparing agreement, you have the information you request from your partners, you communicate with them, you verify this information. I mean, the registration details of the company, you get the address, you get the persons with signatory rights, and so on, so on, so on. Which each of these aspects is just another step and small break in risk management procedure, which helps you not to avoid problems, but to reduce risk in your business operation.
Mm.
I think we have covered this aspect. Then we have a question about specific information sources on company details and financial data, like in Latvia, in the Baltics, we have a Lorsoft. But if I may comment on that, I think those sources, it's not a problem to find them. Company register, there is, for example, in European Union sources which list company register web pages, or to find similar, it's just a matter of searching in search engine. Maybe you have some comments on that on Sweden?
I mean, absolutely. The open company information is easy to find. And that's also like the first, if any red flag occurred there, then you shouldn't even consider the business. But to get the information about that's more in depth about the criminal records or the actual ownership behind the company, is there any goalkeepers, or are they legitimate? To get that information, you have to visit several different sources. Often in person, through a phone call or through an email, or through logging into a particular database. But this open general company information is open everywhere, to get the signatory rights, to get the board members, and the official company information.
And also our typical advice from risk management perspective is to have risk management measures in I would say in conjunction with the volume of the deal, but meaning the more money is involved, the bigger the volume of the deal, the more risk management steps you should take. For example, small deals compared to turnover of the company are not necessarily, you don't need to necessarily involve professionals like lawyers or risk management specialists. You can do it in-house, you can do it on your own, you can do open source screening and so on. But as we go higher and volumes of the business increase in the specific deal, and they are critical compared to the turnover of your company, of course, you should allocate adequate resources to mitigate the risks. I mean, involve professionals to do a company screening, involve professionals to prepare for legal support in specific jurisdiction, as Robin mentioned. So it's all about doing things in conjunction with the actual volumes of the deal.
Yeah, but the positive thing is that in Scandinavia, this is, as the information is quite open, and also considering that more and more companies are doing this. This is in Scandinavian countries, this is a shelf product. It's a volume product, so it's not an expensive thing to do. If you want to do a company check on a company, many of the security or risk management companies have it on the shelf. It takes a few days, and they have a fixed price on it. I mean, we help large property companies in Sweden. They do this on all of their tenants. All of the tenants, they are they are Swedish companies. They have employees, they have records, but they still do it on all entities, not only cash-driven entities, but all entities, just to avoid having criminals or fraudsters in your building as tenants.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Another question. In relation to payment terms, possibly you have some comments on is there any specific requirements, legal requirements in Norway and Finland that you know about, similar to 30 days payment in Sweden? Do you know how it's organized in Norway and Finland?
No, I don't know how the legal things are. I mean, normally we are quite similar in many laws, but the standard payment is still the same, about 30 days. But I don't know if it's applicable by law. And
a question about legal processes. Yeah, to file a claim in court, you need to 10% payment and involve expensive lawyers in Sweden. Are there any cheaper ways? Can you provide comment on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to. I mean, you can file a lawsuit. That's a piece of paper that you fill in. It takes 10 minutes to fill it in, and then you have to provide a proof to it. It doesn't have to be an expensive process to do the first step. But if you want to be successful, the more information you have at hand when going to the court, the cheaper it will be. The more evidence that you have, the cheaper it will be. Because before the court proceedings, you will have an initial proceeding together with the counterparty, their lawyer, your lawyer, and then they will try to settle to the same or another amount before going to the court. So I wouldn't say that going to the court is automatically very expensive. It is expensive if you go the full way and if you do not have all the documentation. I mean, going to court could be basically risk-free if you do your homework properly. If you know that there is money behind, if you have the agreement in place, if you have everything set up, then it would probably end with just filing the lawsuit. And then they will settle the debt with you, and then you can just cancel the lawsuit. I mean, it's an important tool to have as well as an enforcement measure for the company, but this is only applicable when you have everything in place. Because also, if you are defrauded, you're not the first one that they have defrauded. They have done this before. And if I were a fraudster, I would rather fraud a company from Latvia, from the Baltics, from Eastern Europe, not from Sweden or not from Scandinavian countries that doesn't have the born knowledge of the society, of the rules and the culture. I have a much larger chance of actually win a case against a foreign company because they do not have all the agreements in place. They do not have all the business aspects with them.
Thank you very much, Robin. And I believe we can proceed with the second part of our webinar and possibly answer questions after the second presentation, and then just go through the more questions we have. So in the second part, I would like to do a presentation. So it's I will share the screen now. Do a more general presentation on cultural differences and business culture in Scandinavia and its difference from the business culture in Latvia and possibly in the Baltics. So what I will talk about is differences in perception of Latvians and Scandinavians. The aspects that we already touched upon related to the contracts and agreement on partner screening, and end with a case study, which will be more general because many of the aspects I intended to talk about were already covered by Mr. Loft. In this case, since Robin is coming from Sweden and we largely focused on aspects related to Sweden, I would like to talk more broadly on Nordic countries, meaning involving both Scandinavian countries and Finland. And also when preparing to this webinar, I talked to a number of our partners, of experienced entrepreneurs from the respective markets. So I will try to give sort of general insight from perspective of risk management. Firstly, doing business in Scandinavia is a very good and excellent region for doing business, and there are a number of objective reasons for that. Those are, if we talk about Sweden, Denmark, Finland, those are very open societies, very transparent societies, availability of business information, as Robin mentioned. Especially in Sweden, every information is accessible. If you cannot access it being a foreigner, you definitely will have access to it using local partners, and of course considering aspects related to GDPR. Of course, Nordic countries and Scandinavian countries are objectively among the best countries for doing business. World Bank doing business standards, doing business study, if I may say so, shows that Denmark is number 4 globally, Norway number 9, Sweden number 10, Finland number 20. But of course, one has to acknowledge that business culture differences are to be considered, and some of them actually we believe could be helpful and assistful for businesses from the Baltics, as they are very similar, and some of them are not. If we talk specifically about business culture differences in Scandinavian countries specifically, the major aspects that come out from when talking to entrepreneurs, experienced entrepreneurs from these countries, are that Denmark and Finland could be considered as very straightforward communication and negotiation process. Typically, these businessmen are, when they come to the meetings, they are ready to make the decision basing on this specific communication. One of my partner, long-time partners, commented, commented that it could be that actually Baltic person, Latvian, it could be much easier to deal with Danish businessmen than Swedish, as Danes are much more similar in their business culture or communication culture to that of the Latvian. If compared to Sweden, it's more culture of negotiation, discussion. Decisions are not made in a hurry. When typically Swedes come to the meeting, they come to the negotiation, they come to listen to you, discuss, then they go back and then they make the decision. Would you agree with that, Robin, or how do you see that? You're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. How would you comment on that? Do you see it the same?
Yeah, I think that would be correct. I mean, also Denmark is a even smaller country than Sweden, and Norway as well, and they are very export driven. And if you go to a group company in Copenhagen, they normally speak English. When you go to a group company in Sweden, they normally speak Swedish.
Yeah. And also one of my contacts compared actually Swedish business culture, if compared to other Scandinavian culture, much more closer to that of the American in negotiation aspects and so on. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. I mean, it's important in Sweden. It's always important in Sweden to go through every decision very thoroughly. If we are procuring a new contractor, have we looked at all the options? Have we really weighed the pros and the cons? Did we really get the best deal and best price? Do we have the right risk mitigation measures in place? So there are more considerations here. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. And if we talk about Norway from the Scandinavian countries, it definitely could be considered as much more comparatively closed society, meaning it is much more, the importance of local partners is much more bigger. You need to know the people. You need to know with whom you work. You need to have the local support, which is greatly different from Sweden or Finland. In Norway and Finland, face-to-face communication is very important. Building the relationship, personal relationship. You need to know the partners with whom you are working. It's not just a formality. And important aspect is that Norway is not a member of European Union. Of course, Norway is a member of European Economic Area, but still the legislative and regulatory aspects need to be considered when going to this market, especially if compared to Sweden, Finland, or Denmark. There are things that are much more complicated due to this aspect. So I would definitely highlight. Homework before looking for potential partners. Main conclusion, I would say it's in general, it's in no way different than exporting to any other markets or looking for partners in any other markets. Of course, key is your product or service. The secondary is your company's reputation and image. Imagine that the local partners that you try to build relationship in Sweden are going to check you. They are going to look for references on your company. They are on you as a person, as a head of the company or manager of the company. What is your reputation? How you are seen in the market? Especially, I believe in Swedish market, the transparency aspect of the company, meaning operations of the company are clear, visible, transparent. Financial information is available, location of the company, addresses of the company, which all can be verified in our days. I mean, management of the company, who manages the company? Do they have the signatory rights? Do they have the authorization? Ownership structure, is it clear? Who owns the company? Who is the beneficiary owner? Or there are some signals that actually this information is being, I would say, hidden. Is it easy to find and verify information on your company? Do you have a web page? Do you have social media accounts? Is the web page like newest information in web page is like 2 years ago, or it's constantly renovated? The activity of social media accounts, all it reflects and supports that you can show that the company is actually working. And this is a matter of just an open source screening. And nowadays the language barriers due to translation tools available are basically non-existent. If it is publicized in Latvian, some aspects on your legislation history or negative reputation aspects, if it's in Latvian, it doesn't matter. It can be translated in English and got to know and so on. And critical aspect that we see from risk management consultancy perspective is that you need to adapt to the market you are interested to enter. If you go to Scandinavian market, to Swedish market, which is very open and transparent one, you need to adapt and be make yourself accepted in this market, be as it is accepted in this specific culture.
And also, I mean, what is expected is quality. I mean,
yes.
Swedes and other Scandinavian countries, they have no problems with buying services from abroad, but they will never accept lower quality. So they want to see someone that looks like themselves. They want to have updated web pages. They want to have references of previous work. So they love lower prices, and they love to get special competence, but they will never accept lower quality.
Exactly. I think it's very, very critical comment. Risk management tools. Some of the tools, of course, or all of them were already mentioned by Robin, but I will once more repeat the major aspects. Know your partner, know the company, know the people behind the company. And as mentioned here, many times Scandinavian countries are among the most open societies. Information is freely available. If you don't have the resources or knowledge to access it, of course you need to involve specialists, but you need to know the background of your partners. Involve the professionals is always the major advice, but of course I understand that the volume of the specific deal is critical, and in this aspect I touched upon previously. Also, another topic that was already mentioned by Robin, but once more, the typical aspects included in company screening are company's registration, details, financial information, tax debts, open source screening, which includes company's reputation, unhealthy relations, involvements, scandals, legislation history, which all of it is, especially in Scandinavian countries, available publicly. And I think also vice versa, that these aspects are, please consider that these aspects are screened by your potential partners in Scandinavia. You should look from these aspects as a sort of check boxes on your company. If it can be verified, if this information can be accessed on your company, and what is the essence of this information? Are our credit records okay? Do we have legislation history, and how do we communicate that? Are there any aspects related to our reputation that are adverse that we need to work on? How do we communicate them? How do we keep transparency, and so on? Once more, going back to the written contact, is that I very much liked the comment one of my former partners with whom we communicated when I prepared this webinar, and he very well explained that written contract is a very great tool to overcome cultural differences and manage risks. From one aspect, it doesn't matter, even if there are cultures where it's all verbally agreed, everything is agreed with handshake, you can still keep to your risk management tools and culture and say, gentlemen, here is my proposal, here is a contract that I propose to conclude before we actually make this deal. And it's a matter of negotiation. You just present your terms, and you find the ways that it's beneficial for both parties involved in the business, because that is the essence of the business. That is the only way how it works. But once more, the contract is a good tool because it also allows to exchange of information on the partner entity. It allows you to have details to be verified on the registration of the company, the person with signatory rights who signs the actual agreement. Does he have the right, or she, sorry, to sign the agreement? Yeah. If not, why? what are the aspects. You get the address of the company. You can verify the address where the company is actually located. That will show you if the company is actually operating or it's not. And then critical aspect, when you see, as we call them, red flags, or the aspects that raise some suspicion. For example, a company address is in some, well, it's some very bad region, or for example, the company is presenting itself as manufacturers of high volume, but you see that the address is, for example, registered in the residential apartment. What does it tell you? So you need to verify that, why it is registered there, where is the actual operations of the company, are those operational, are that location the actual operation of the company, which all indicates certain risks to the potential deal. Important, I believe important topic to consider is the general image of Latvian entrepreneurs, because when preparing to this webinar, I specifically addressed this question to a number of entrepreneurs in Scandinavia and also Finland, and the major feedback or major conclusions that I can make that are seen by Scandinavian interpreters as risk aspects in businesses from Latvia, specifically Latvia, and probably it can be broadened to Baltics and Eastern Europe, is Eastern business culture. By Eastern business culture, I presume based idea that the trust is based on personal relationship. So that trust can be built only if we know each other, which is not common in Scandinavia, which is also, besides being very open society, I think also very trustful society. People trust each other. If I say something or I present or suggest a deal, the other person in Scandinavia typically will trust me on my good intent, yeah, which is not common not so common in Baltic or Latvian business culture. When we don't trust, we make agreements, we write everything on paper. Yeah. So again, the key here is to address this issue, and when going to the Scandinavian market, just keep that in mind. Another aspect when talking with my contacts that I see are the differences among the Baltic countries. Baltic countries are not seen as equal or similar. There are great differences between Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and they are very well, I would say, considered by businessmen in Scandinavia. For example, of course, for Finnish businessmen, Estonians are very much more known and common than Latvians, but also they have certain view how they perceive the businesses. For example, lately in Helsinki, all the major construction companies now are basically Estonian owned. So some of the businessmen I talked to in Helsinki even dare to say that in some aspects, Estonia has exceeded the Finnish business volume. Yeah, so it's totally different view how they perceive Latvians, which is again very much more tended to Eastern business culture, which is more high risk. That's it. So the aspects that I mentioned before about the homework before going to the new market has to be considered even more to have successful relationship in Scandinavia. So it implies to previously mentioned issues like image, brand, transparency, reputation, so on and so on. Was to talk about more that are that the Latvian construction companies face in Sweden, which we have faced a lot. But all those cases can be put down into several major topics that were already also highlighted by Robin, but just to brief you a bit more, firstly, it's neglect of local regulations and requirements, which typically cause problems. When Latvian companies face problems of non-payment from local clients in Sweden and so on, often the basis is found in this aspect that the Latvian company has simply neglected local regulations. That's why this aspect can be used by the opponent party in dispute regulation. Sometimes Latvian company cannot afford to go to court simply because they have violated certain regulations. Yeah. Another critical aspect are the preventive risk management tools, which very often are not used by Latvian entrepreneurs in general in Sweden. Most typical example is what Mr. Loft mentioned about insolvency issues. High number of cases could be resolved before problems could be resolved even before they start if Latvian interpreters would simply look at the companies, their potential partners before going to the actual deal. They would see that the company has financial problems, that the company has reputational problems. It's just too high of a risk, but these preventive measures are not done. Nobody has checked anything. The contract has been signed, and then it becomes a very long legal process. Yeah. Definitely, I would advise having local legal support, which would help you to have like norms and terms of the contract that potentially could help a lot in potential civil dispute in the case. Yeah, local lawyers know how to have the local competence, local knowledge of the local legislation to mitigate those risks. For example, having specific requirements on payments, which for Latvian entrepreneurs simply is not known if it is accepted or not in the local market and so on. Yes, I believe the other aspects were covered by Robin. Also to mention that before the webinar, we had some of the questions that were sent in were very specific, and I would like to address these issues that we intentionally did not answer or cover any specific issues because we cannot do that also due to confidentiality reasons. But with the specific questions, you can turn directly to us. Mr. Robin Loft, his contact information was in presentation, which will be sent to you, I believe. Also, my contact information is available, and with direct and specific questions on specific cases, we can talk with you only directly, and we cannot address these aspects in public. Mm-hmm. So this would be to cover the aspects that I intended. And I believe we have also some questions in the chat. Robin, had you a chance to look at?
Yeah, we have from Vadim's Basileus, what is the success rate from your experience? I don't really understand the question. It depends on all the circumstances and success rate in what. So Vadim, please reach out to me or Marcus if you have any specific question about that. Can you advise
also,
any?
I see we have, yes, please, Robin.
Yeah, Alexander's writing, could you advise any communication methods, first steps for young manufacturing company to reach out to potential Scandinavian partners? I mean, that is basically how to establish a business abroad. And first of all, you have to look for what way to expand abroad. Do you want to start up a company in Sweden or Scandinavia? Do you want to open up a filial, or do you want to open up a branch, or just export things to a Swedish company? It also depends, and it's more into the business development sector, but again, we're used to that aspect as well. So please contact me or Marcis if you have any issues.
Also,
there is
if
one
I may
question,
comment on this, if I may, about the first steps. Actually, when preparing to this event, I got to know that there are actually, besides our operations, there are a number export consulting companies specifically supporting Latvian business going to Sweden. So also Latvian Chamber of Commerce is very active in this aspect. So there should not be any problems. Of course, the major business aspect remains. Do it on your own, or if you can't do it on your own, you need to pay somebody to do it. Yeah. But there are resources both in non-governmental issues and in private sector that you can assist. And nevertheless, also, I think we can definitely mention Latvian Investments and Development Agency. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there are no shortcuts, of course, but we have ourselves also used different of the business councils for all of our countries when looking to expand abroad, to get contacts, opportunities, visit fairs and so on. And
also I have a question that's probably directed to me about the term that I used, is the Eastern business culture. Does this imply cheating, dishonesty, etc.? No, what I mean by Eastern business culture is different business culture that is different to that of used in Western Europe or Scandinavia. And it's easier to explain how to comply with Western business culture or the Scandinavian business culture is that having the aspects of transparency, of good reputation, of communication and so on, that you are transparent, that your company can be found, that the ownership structure of your company is clear. And as opposite to that is companies that typically operate, for example, without having a web page, only with direct personal contacts. And this is just an opposite way to that, which simply does not work so well, or doesn't work in Sweden. In Sweden, you just need to be an open and transparent entity, information on which can be verified, the information on reputation can be found, you have web page, you have social media accounts and so on. This is important aspect. On contrary, my meaning of Eastern business culture is, for example, if I go to typically Eastern countries, and Robin can very much later comment on Middle East, yeah, you need to have, even by law, a local partner. So you cannot do anything with local partner legally. You need to have it. Everything based on personal trust. So I go to Eastern country, I know this guy personally, and the trust is based on aspect that I will not fool him or defraud him because he knows my father and brother, he knows my family, and so on, so on. That's what I mean by Eastern business culture. Maybe Robin, you would have some comments from
that was a very good explanation.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a very good explanation how we perceive the Eastern mentality. But I mean, even in Russia, where we work with partners since, 15, 20 years back, we still have written agreements. In Middle East, of course, in many countries, you need to have a local partner. And that's also an open door to be frauded. And I think it's much more common to be frauded there than in Scandinavia, because it's a totally different culture. And when you get to that place, when you get to UAE or Saudi, they show you a culture and they show you a setup and they introduce you to the prince's cousin or whatever, and they try to give you that sense of certainty that no, we don't need this, we don't need that, and then you feel very good when you leave. But then when they ask for more money, and then you think, oh, if I give them more money, I will get this business deal. And I have personally seen companies going bankrupt in this way. From Sweden, trying to establish in United Arab Emirates. So it's always important to have a reliable partner to find the right way forward. And I also see 2 questions from Arthurs and Ilse, but I think that those are more specific as well. I mean, me and Marcus are happy to discuss this with you personally, or LIA as well, of course, for no charge, just to have a discussion about it. But just as an end statement from my side, I mean, now we have focused on risk and all the problems that may occur when doing business abroad. I mean, doing business abroad is a fantastic opportunity. I mean, meet new people, see new cultures, make more money, expand the business into new areas. I mean, it's fantastic when everything is going in the right way. I mean, we ourselves, we are constantly working cross-border. We're constantly looking for new countries or regions to develop our business. And as long as the risks are mitigating properly, as they should be in all business cases, it could be a fantastic experience and opportunity for all companies. So I just want to stress that even if we're talking about the negative aspects here, we are very positive to do business abroad.
Yeah. This is very important. This had to be said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and with this, I think we could continue this discussion for a long time, but we're running out of time, unfortunately. So we will have to finish it today. But as Martis and Robin said, you can reach out to them directly if you have any specific questions. Ja, paldies visiem par uzmanību šodien. Un tad es novēlu jums jauku atlikušo dienas daļu un uz tikšanos arī citos webināros. Un, ja gadījumā jums ir kādi jautājumi, tad droši sazinieties ar lektoriem vai arī rakstiet, zvaniet uz LIA eksporta veicināšanas nodaļu. Jā, uz tikšanos.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.